What we need to see tomorrow on Laura news-berg's Sunday programme, if she can get the right sort of ministers along to talk about it, is not an analysis of what Boris said and what Boris didn't say during the evidence testimony that he gave to the committee the other day, but instead to look at the waning support for Boris among the Conservative Party, because that evidence is done and dried and dusted. It's finished. And it wasn't a great performance. It was great until he lost his temper. Then he lost his temper and he lost all hope of any future. His job was very simple, and I'm sure he was briefed before he went in there. His job was to reassure the 4 Conservative members of that committee, and I think he failed absolutely to do so, to reassure them that he was trustworthy. Instead, the conversation went wholly on to whether or not and how much he had lied. Had he kept this onto the former, he might have had some hope, but it was moved very, very firmly onto the latter. Did he lie? Did he lie, and at what point did he lie? It's not really a question of whether he lied, it's at what point he knew he was lying. That's the problem. And I think a really good programme tomorrow will focus on what support is left for Boris, which means not a lengthy interview with Nadine Dorries or with Jacob Rees-Mogg, but instead interviews with other people across the Conservative chain of command. How much support does Boris have? Because now he's going to have to change his tack and appeal to the Conservative rank and file to vote for him when his proposed suspension comes to a vote in the House of Commons. Now, the other area that should be tackled tomorrow with some urgency is the squashing of the right wing of the Conservative Party. So a second issue on the Conservative ranks. The third issue is for Labour, so don't worry, Laura, it's coming. So the second issue is about the attempted rebellion by 22 leaders of the party, 22 big names, two former prime ministers, Rees-Mogg, Priti Patel. I don't know about Nadine Dorries, but I'm sure she was there at least in spirit, urging everybody on through that other door. And the 48 abstentions, we shouldn't forget those. But in all, it's a much smaller rebellion than Rishi Sunak might have anticipated. And if those 22 big beasts could not command the 48 who abstained to follow firmly in their footsteps, then they are 22 big beasts who have been de-toothed in the same way as Boris has been shorn, demaned, a Samson without any hair. So, Boris is done, and the right wing, the ERC, is pretty well useless as well. All this should give Rishi Sunak a new lease of life, and if I were Laura news-berg, I would have Rishi Sunak into the studio to set forward his agenda for the next year. And at the same time, I would want to know from Labour how they see this impacting on them, because they've got 2 issues now. Number one, a revitalised Rishi Sunak, who looks every day determined, hard-working, functional, in contrast to the Labour front benches that still look disorganised. Keir Starmer may be leading, but who is following? And can we name any of the Labour front benches? I don't think most of us can. And that's the problem. Name recognition, and if the Labour is expecting to be in a commanding position during the next election and will win, then it needs to build on its name recognition. It needs to get people out there. It needs to get the names and the personalities running around. It's not enough to simply have a red rosette. So Rishi looks dynamic and hardworking, and Sir Keir Starmer is still has some way to go before he can be sure that while the Conservatives are almost certain to lose the next election, is it going to be a rout, or is it simply going to be a blip in what will otherwise be a Conservative-dominated 21st century? And there is something else that can give the Labour Party hope, and that, I'm afraid, is the pretty astonishingly fast collapse of the SNP with Nicola Sturgeon's resignation. Because what we see at the moment is a greater implosion than anything that Brexit gave to the Conservative Party, anything that Jeremy Corbyn gave to Labour. It's extraordinary that we have seen 3 huge political movements destroyed by incidentals, one after the other. Brexit destroyed the Conservative Party. Corbyn destroyed the Labour Party. And now, Nicola Sturgeon, the person who was supposed to be the beacon of hope, the heroine of the SNP, has actually herself ignited it. She's torched the SNP herself. The chances of the SNP revitalising, regrouping, and emerging as a serious challenge to other parties in Scotland, I think, has almost evaporated. I think with that, possibly, will go the thrust for independence. A good government at this moment now would seize the initiative and would build on the positives in our relationship, in the relationship between England and Scotland, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and cement the union. Goodness knows we need it. And we need to work very hard to keep Northern Ireland in the union as well. My forecast would be that Northern Ireland would leave the union faster than Scotland. That was a forecast I made about 6 months ago. I still stand by that. But I would like to see the union remain. I think we are better off together. It's the same reason why I thought we were better off in Europe. We're better off with diversity and with many minds, not always agreeing, but meeting together with the same purpose. And that purpose is the shared belief in the ideals that unite us. The shared belief in democracy, in the rule of law, in the exchange of debate, of ideas, and in regular elections and a broad range of social care. These things should unite us. These things have defined the growth of Europe. And we are part of Europe, whether we want to be or not. So, if I were Laura News-berg, I would be having some senior members of the Labour Party on tomorrow, perhaps with or without Humza Yousaf. I would always have him on a programme anyway, given half a chance, to see how the collapse of the Scottish National Party impacts on the fortunes of the Labour Party, because where the SNP is weak, Labour can edge in and get another seat. And that could make all the difference to whether it's a hung party, whether it's a hung parliament, or whether it's a serious victory for the Labour Party at the next election.